Hello. How are you doing, my beautiful friends? I hope you are having an absolute wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you tuning in, and we are going to be talking all about energy management and time management today, getting the best out of yourself. Now, if you've been following along the last couple of weeks, you know that this is the fifth week in our 6 week series, and it's kind of crazy that we're here. I love that we have been going through this journey, and I appreciate so much the questions that I've been getting in my DMs, just opening up the conversation about self mastery. And being curious is the next right step. If this concept of taking care of yourself in order to get the best out of yourself is a little unfamiliar, that's okay. I've been unfamiliar with it as well, and it's all come out of learning through hardships, through health challenges, and that's ultimately where this mastery is going to come around from is just getting out there, living life, doing the best that you absolutely can, and figuring out different ways to try new things. And that's ultimately what I want to help you achieve today is just a different perspective, a different way to be able to see what you know. And when we change that perspective, when we are willing to look at things inside our lives differently, then we open up the ability to have something new happen, truly. And that's ultimately all that we're going for, right? We know that what got us here isn't going to take us to that next level, to our next goals, and figuring out that new gap that you're approaching when it comes to accomplishing that as far as your performance goes is really what this is all about. So, without further ado, let's dive in. Managing your time and energy effectively is what we're going to be covering today. As I mentioned, this has been an entire series about being able to maximize your truest potential, your fullest potential, while achieving greatness in every aspect of your life. And that brings me to a quick recap of what we've covered so far. So, every single week has been building on itself, starting out with understanding what self mastery is, going into the building blocks of self mastery over the last couple of weeks, and then last week talking about getting in action, putting this into place. And now that you're in action, how do we fine tune this? Now that you have these goals laid out, what is the way that you can manage your time and your energy to let you get everything done that you really want to? So, bringing that all together, what is energy? Energy, in the simplest definition, is the ability to do work. Now, when it comes to quantum and when it comes to science, there are many more complicated explanations and definitions of energy. But when it comes to ourselves, when it comes to us thinking about what we're actually capable in doing, we are measuring our work, we are measuring our capacity. And that is the basis of energy management, establishing and figuring out what are you capable of. So when we think about energy management, we're going to keep the definition simple. It's purely just our ability to do work and our ability to sustain that work is where the management comes in. So kind of jumped ahead here, but we want to have the ability to sustain as much desired work and personal performance without compromising our well being. So, last week we talked about pointing ourselves in the direction. We talked about setting an action plan in place. And an energy management plan goes hand in hand with this because we know that our attention is being pulled in a bunch of different directions. We know that where we put our focus, that is where our energy goes. And that's where we start to see money flow, basically, or success flow, whatever that definition is for yourself. So, jumping back to the energy management model. Okay, so we're breaking this down into 5 steps. And the reason I keep referencing last week is because this energy management goes hand in hand with the goals and the direction and the vision that you've already established for your life. And maybe right now, managing your energy or just trying to get everything done is the feeling that you're having. We can all kind of relate to that. Like, there is so much going on. You get to the end of the day and you're not even sure what you actually accomplished, or you don't feel like you did anything to really move you forward, but you were busy the entire time. And with an energy management approach, you're making sure to maximize your work in the direction that's in alignment with the goals and the vision that you put out there. So all of this is integrating. Again, every week has been building on itself. And I want you to remember that because these 5 pieces that I'm about to explain to you might feel a little similar. They might feel like you've heard this from me before. And the reason that is because we have to remind ourselves over and over again. And these concepts are layered together. So, diving right in, I went ahead and made just this little chart that walks us through the 5 pieces of energy management. And energy management and time management overlap, and you're going to know that by executing your energy in the most effective way that's aligned with your purpose, vision, and goals, you're going to see time change. Time is just a construct, it's a perspective. And when you focus your energy in a specific way that allows you to balance it around your priorities, then the way you view time starts to change and you feel more freedom, you feel more space in your life. So, starting with step number 1, clarify. Clarify your baseline, your circumstances, and your essential needs. Now, what does this mean? Okay. Clarifying your baseline means that every single one of us has a different threshold. What you are capable of sustaining and handling and doing on a day to day basis is different than your partner or your spouse, is different than your coworker, is different than your boss. What you are actually capable of, your thresholds are your own and they're unique to you. So your baseline is the absolute minimum. Like, what can you do on a day to day basis that has to get done that leaves you still feeling somewhat full? And when I say full, you're thinking of this as an energy tank. So, at the very top, when you're maxed out, your energy is a green light, then you are operating inside your abilities, your powers, your thresholds, all those things. Then your baseline at the very bottom is what you cannot do any more of, or like you're maxed out. And I, I guess as I'm trying to explain this, I'm realizing that I'm trying to say high energy. Um, High baseline is like your energy is fully at the top. And also, when you're at E, that just means that you're on empty. Like, you can't take on anything else. Your bandwidth is literally maxed out. And so, knowing these baselines, knowing these essential needs, knowing this threshold gap that you have is ultimately going to be what allows you to perform inside of that. And the reason I talk so much about this is because living with different circumstances, if you remember from previous episode of this, the circumstances are the facts of our lives that we can't change. So when we clarify our circumstances and we identify our thresholds, we can say to ourselves, do I have more energy to give to this? Do I not have more energy to give to this? But I need to find the energy. So where am I going to allocate this? Energy cannot be created or destroyed, it's purely shifted and shared. So when we take it away from something, that just means that we're putting it into something else. And that is how we prioritize what we need. So bringing it back, clarify your baseline. Know your own thresholds. both your upper limit and your absolute bottom of the barrel or your absolute minimum of what you're capable of handling. Then look inside your circumstances, the things that are happening in and around you, and determine what you need around those things. And when I say your essential needs, I mean literally the things you need to be able to do all of the things you want to do. That can be very simple, including water, food, good sleep, movement of your body, all of those pieces of like just keeping yourself functioning. And then on top of that, the essential needs inside the circumstances. So maybe it's a circumstance that you're working through in work. Maybe it's a circumstance that's in a relationship. Whatever that is, those are going to be the essential needs that we're identifying. And the reason we clarify all of this, the reason we sit with ourselves, we break it all down, is because then we're going to identify what work you need to do inside of each one of these pieces of your life. And this identification is different than clarifying because we go from just knowing the information to actually starting to put together what needs to get done. And when we shift from just clarifying, sitting with ourselves, knowing the goals, knowing our baselines, identifying these essential needs to keep it all going, we then begin. I just realized I said identify again, and that really didn't work, but it's okay. Um, when we identify the work that you need to get done inside those circumstances, we're starting to get specific about the goals, about the outcome that you want to create. And as you identify that, we're going to put a plan together. And that plan is step number three. So we know what we have to get done, we know the capacity that we have to do it. And now we're going to put it all together to create some checkpoints along the way. Now, these checkpoints are used to measure our progress and measure if we're moving in the right direction. But you can think of it as um, just a milestone. And I like to think of checkpoints as something that just keeps you on track, kind of like a pilot, if you could imagine just getting off 1 degree, they can land in a totally different continent than where they're even trying to go. And those are your checkpoints, those are your trailheads in this process. So, to simplify, we clarify what we have and what we're capable of doing inside our capacity. Then we identify what needs to get done and we allocate appropriately during that step. Then the third thing is to put the plan together, right? What do we actually get to do? What action do we get to take that's going to move us towards this desired outcome? And then that brings us to the test. And I just realized that my little lines got a little screwy here. So, this test is really where you put your action into motion. And the reason I call it a test is because truly you are testing every single day in your life. You're trying different things to see what sticks and what works. And maybe 8 hours of sleep is your sweet spot, or maybe you can function highly on 6 hours, and that is enough for you to be able to get the best out of your day. Maybe there's a certain type of um, treatment or body work that you can do that helps maximize your thing. All of these things are tests, as well as the action that you put into place with your circumstances. So, giving you an example, back when I was really going through the thick of my burnout, I had to start testing my thresholds and I had to start flexing new boundaries, new skills when it came to figuring out the way to manage the fact that my body was breaking down. And it's not because I had an exact roadmap, but I was doing something every single day that was going to be supportive of the circumstances that I was in and was going to be moving me towards the direction that I wanted to be going. And that's really what the test is. It's just the reminder that life is your greatest experiment and you are your ultimate scientist. You are the chemist in this um, creative ability to make your life whatever you want it to be. And that's why I say testing is your action step, because if we get too attached to what we're looking to create or the outcomes we're trying to get, then that can be difficult. And when those things don't always land the way we expect them to, expectations is where we start to allow ourselves to suffer because we aren't hitting our own marks. But when we change our perspective to, I've clarified what I have and am capable of doing. I've identified the things and pieces that I know have to get done in order to make this circumstance work. I've created the plan so that I can put this into motion. And then you get in motion and you just test, you trial over and over again. And throughout this process, throughout your test, you're then collecting information that allows you to adapt and adjust. And this information collection, this feedback that you get from the changes in your circumstances, from the progress that you're making as you're moving towards your goal, those things that you want to have inside the circumstances you're living with, then you're able to readjust. And so that is the last piece, is taking all of this feedback and checking back in with yourself. You basically start this whole thing over again once you've gone out there and tested some actions, once you've gotten motion and you get feedback along the way. And that feedback is what lets you know, okay, I'm on track with my milestones, or maybe I'm not. What can I do now? You reattune to that variable, those new set of circumstances, because you've moved yourself forward. And that's what allows you to then be able to clarify again. Now, when we talk about thresholds, something that just came to me as I was saying this, and I want to make sure I leave it out there for anyone who needs to hear it. Your thresholds are meant to be pushed. You are meant to be uncomfortable in this time of stretching yourself to accomplish your goals. The reason I say this is because when it comes to energy management, you only get to increase your upper limit if you push yourself to that threshold and then you go just a little bit past it. But you do this delicately. And I say that wholeheartedly. We do this delicately because if you push too hard or you go over the line too often, too frequently, and too intensely, then your body's not going to be responsive to that. You're not going to be able to sustain what you're trying to sustain, which is ultimately the entire point of this, is to manage your energy, and your energy is going to give you time so that you can move towards your goals. And knowing that being uncomfortable in this process is part of the process is not a bad thing. You're going to be uncomfortable and you're going to push yourself certain days to make this balance work. Now, that brings me to my next point, that this is a balance. So, you're not going to be pushing that threshold. You're not going to be bumping up against that ceiling or taking it one step further every single day. There is an ebb and flow in this, and there is a adjustment that comes. And so when we say that something is better than nothing each day, that is the culmination of energy management, so that you are able to get the best out of yourself, do the most amount of work that you want to do without compromising your well-being. Now, energy management is a personal journey, and it's something that is unique to you. As we said, these thresholds are your own. What is happening inside your circumstances is your own. And figuring out the right steps to take is something that you don't have to do alone. But learning this is this practice that you put into place every single day. And then you have people or a community or a coach or someone helping you check in with yourself. Maybe it's a monthly call, maybe it's a weekly text, maybe you join an accountability group who you're around or in a community with other people working on similar goals that are specific to them, but you're all mastering the exact same thing. And I say this because energy management and time management is something that you don't have to do alone. It's not something that you have to reinvent the wheel around. You just get to practice, you get to test, and then you get to adapt and adjust. And that's ultimately like really what I want you to take away from this is there's no perfect sauce to this. I can't tell you sleep this many days, spend this much time reading, journal this much, work for 8 hours, take care of your family, make sure your kids get everything they need because what you need is different than what I need, and what you and I need is different than what your partner needs, and what your kids need, and what your boss needs. So, figuring it out for yourself is going to be what allows you to show up in these other areas of your life in the ways that you want to. And that again brings me back to the fact that this process, this energy management system of checking in with your own baselines, getting clear on what your essential needs are so that you can operate at your highest function. And then identifying inside your circumstances, where does your energy need to go and what are the actual action steps that you need to take so that you can create this plan to move you forward. You test it, then you adapt it, and you adjust it. And you do this over and over again. And every single time you do this, you're moving closer to that final destination, that vision, that dream, that goal that we mapped out last week. This is what's taking you there on a day to day basis. This is the process of transformation. Now, I know that we've covered a lot. It's kind of something that's interesting to digest, which I understand. And I just want you to know that I'm here. Send me your questions, send me a DM. Let's open up this conversation because self mastery itself. Self mastery is something that is designed to optimize your life. And the reason you do this is because you already want to get the best out of it. You're already doing it. And we can maybe make it a little bit easier. We can make this an enjoyable process. We can understand what we're actually doing on a day to day basis instead of just going through the motions. And when we do that, when we have clarity around why we're doing what we're doing, then we can act intentionally. Then we have the ability to choose our actions. And going back to, I don't even know, week 2 or 3, when we talked about the model and the mindset to be able to get the most out of your life the way that you want to, it's that trickle down of knowing that our results in our lives come from the actions that we take. And the actions we take come from the feelings that we have. And the feelings we have come from the thoughts that we allow ourselves to think. And the thoughts that we have come from the circumstances that make up our lives. So I hope I hope that this has been helpful in clarifying what energy management is and how it can play an effective role in your life to be able to allow you to do more, as much work as you want to be able to do without compromising your well-being. My name is Alexis Ray. I am here to help you on your self mastery journey, and I appreciate you tuning in for this week's webinar. I can't wait to see you again. And until then, please remember that life is beautiful and you create the magic. Have a good one.